How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Tzadi Gimel, Daf 93 of Masechta BavaMetzia. Friends. Today's daf is a cool daf. It might be another. I feel like it might be a long one. Maybe kind of yesterday, kind of long, pretty long, almost an hour, but not quite an hour, but very close to an hour. Might be something like that. But anyways, I don't even know what time it is because I'm sitting in a different place. All right. Okay, so we start with one Mishnah, which we saw a lot of, maybe even the whole. We saw most of the Mishnah yesterday at the end of the daf. Got a little complicated at the end of the daf yesterday. When we get to a new Mishnah, it feels like this is this Mishnah that we get to in the middle of today's daf. We're actually going to learn hopefully three Mishnahs today. The middle one feels like it's the quintessential BavaMetzia Mishnah. So we'll get there in the middle. Okay. Yeah, but we'll get there in the middle, in the Metzia. Alright. We're going to start on Daf Tzadi Gimel, Amud Aleph, at the Mishnah. 2 lines into the wide lines. Kotzeitz Adam al yidei atzmo. Okay, we learned about this yesterday, that a person can make a deal for himself. So meaning, he could say to the Balabayis, I'm not going to eat any of the fruits. Instead, give me, pay me instead. He could make this arrangement also for his adult children, that he should be paid instead of them eating fruits. And for his Eved and Shifcha who are adults, and for his wife, because for all of those people, his adult children, his adult avadim, his wife, so they have das, and therefore they can. If they have an issue with it, then they can raise an issue. But he can't make these arrangements. He can't say, my minor children will not eat and instead pay me. He can't do that. Nor for his Evan and Shifcha who are ketanim, nor for his animal, because in those scenarios and in those examples, they don't have da'as. We saw yesterday at the very end of it, right? Yesterday was a whole question of Mishalo Ochel, Mishal Shamaymu Ochel. So I think that we had said that ultimately at the end, I think we said that according to this Mishnah, it's Mishal Shamaymu Ochel, therefore he has no right to receive their payment for the fruits because it's theirs. Again, we saw this yesterday. Somebody who hires workers and they are going to they're going to work with fruits that are net to revai, so they can't be eaten right now. They have to be eaten in Yerushalayim. Okay, so the workers can't eat. It's net to revai. It's also. Now, if he didn't tell them in advance that you can be working with net to revai, which you're unable to eat, so then he has to be poded the net to revai into money, which makes the fruits then mutter to eat, and then they can eat, because he didn't tell them in advance that this was the case. So he has to do this for them so that they could partake of the fruits, because they didn't know otherwise. Nisparsu igulav, nispatchu chavyosav. If he had fig cakes that got unfig caked, and they needed to be refig caked, or if you had wine barrels that got open and had to be resealed, so the workers can't eat because they're already chayiv in trumas and maasros. The fig cakes are already finished product. They're chayiv in trumas and maasros. The wine, the barreled wine, is already chayiv in trumas and maasros. So the workers cannot eat from it. But if he had not told them in advance that they're going to be working with figs that were already chayiv in trumas and maasros, or wine that was already chayiv in trumas and maasros, then he has to separate the tithes from them so that the workers can eat. Shomrei Peris Ochlin Milchos Medina Avalo Minatora, and this is what the Gemara is going to be focusing on, because obviously we did the rest of the Mishnah was in the Gemara yesterday. So it's this last line that the Gemara is going to focus on, which is Shomrei Peris, people who are guarding fruits. Right up until now, we've been discussing people who are working hands-on with the fruits, right? Whether they're harvesting or threshing or whatever else, whatever else they might be doing. But what about the people who are guarding the whole geschäft? Right? What about the people who are guarding it? what happens to them? So Ochlim Hilchos Medina V'lo Min HaTorah. Min HaTorah, they don't have any right to the fruits. The workers have rights. The people working with the fruit, right? As you're harvesting the grapes, one for me, one for you. But people who are guarding it from the outside, Midoraisa, they don't have a right to eat from the fruits. But Hilchos Medina, the rules of the street are, right, practically speaking, that they do, that we give them to eat. Fine. Now we're going to see a machloikes between Rav and Shmuel vis-a-vis Shomrei Peris, the guarders of the geschäft, of the field, of the work. Those who are guarding, are they considered like osei maise? Is guarding like working, like just like the workers are working, the guard is working? Or do we say that that it's not considered like an osei maise, like he's not doing something? We're going to see this machlokas now. I get it. So, Chevra, the reason why I'm sitting on this side of the table really bad, so I'm just on the other side of the table, is because like yesterday I had to move because the sun was so stark. So that's why I'm avoiding the sun. So I could see like the sun wanting to like hit me in the face, because the sun is assuming that I'm on the other side, and I'm fooling the sun because I'm not there, so it can't hit me in the face. Haha. Says the Gemara, Shomrei Peris, when it comes to these garters of the fruits, Amr Rav, Leishanu Ella, Shomrei Ginos Ufardesin. So says Rav that that's talking about Shomer Ginos Ufardesin, while Shomer Gitos Varemos Ochel Min HaTorah. Givaldi. You hear this? So says Rav that when the Mishnah says that these garters eat Milchos Medina, not Midoraisa, only Milchos Medina. It's a custom. So that's talking about when what they're guarding is, orchards and gardens that are not being harvested right now. So therefore, right, as the Mishnah had said, b'mechuber lekarka b'shas gemar melacha, during the time of harvest, but it's not now during the time of harvest. They're just guarding the field. So therefore, even if they were, they are, so for example, right, we had said that if what you're working in is like, weeding onions or something, so you can't eat from it because it's not the harvest right now. So therefore, they're basically like they're working the field at a time that isn't the harvest, and therefore they're not allowed to eat mida oraisa, but mehilchos medina, they can eat, right? The custom is to give them to eat. Right, so again, Amarav says, Rav, that when we say that they can eat mehilchos medina, but nami doraisa l'shanu ela shomrei ginos ufardesin, that's talking about people who are the guards who are guarding orchards and gardens when they're pre-harvest. They're still attached to the ground and it's pre-harvest. Aval shom, right? So even the workers themselves wouldn't be able to eat at that point. Aval shomrei gitos va'aremis, but if they are guarding already detached produce that is pre-truma, well then, ochlim min HaTorah, they can even eat mida oraisa at that point. Why? Because kasover mishamer ka'oise maise domi. Because Rav holds that a guard is just as much of a worker as the other workers. He's doing epis, he's working. And therefore, when it comes, just like the workers who are working with the detached produce pre-trumas and maisris are allowed to eat midaraisa, so can the guard. Now, if he's just guarding a field that is pre-harvest, well then, nobody can eat at that point, and therefore the fact that he's allowed to eat would only be midaraban and not midaraisa milchos medina. Ushmuel Amar says Shmuel lo shanu ella shomrei gitos va'aremos, that no, says Shmuel disagrees. He says that when we say that the guard can eat mehilchos medina midarabanan, it's talking about when he's guarding during the detached pre-trumas and maisris phase. That's when he can eat mehilchos medina. Aval shomrei ginos ufardesim, but if they're guarding gardens and orchards pre-harvest, forget about it. Ein anochlin lo min HaTorah v'lo milchos medina, not at all. Not min HaTorah, not milchos medina. Because kasav mishamer lav ka'oise maise domi. Because Shmuel holds that guarding is not like a maise. It's not like you're a proactive worker like the actual workers, and therefore he's lav ka'oise maise. So when it comes to just guarding a garden or an orchard pre-harvest, I mean, forget about it, right? Even workers aren't allowed to, even people who were Osa Maisa would not be allowed to eat at that point. Of course, the guards would be unable to eat at that point. Because they're not Osa Maisa. So obviously they can't eat at that point. But if we're talking about produce that has already been detached from the ground pre-Trumas Umaisris, where the workers who are Osa Maisa, who are working, can eat Midoraisa, the guard who is not considered to be an Osa Maisa, so he can eat Milchus Medina, right? Nonetheless, right, the custom is to give them to eat. Okay. Most of Rav Acha bar Rav Huna, we're going to ask a few kashas against Shmuel, and then we're actually ultimately going to say that the halacha is like Shmuel. Or at least it sounds like we can say that, at least Rav Ashi says the halacha is like Shmuel. Now, but first, two questions against Shmuel. Most of Rav Acha bar Rav Huna, Rav Acha bar Rav Huna asks, Hamishamer es haparit, somebody who's guarding a pare aduma. A pare aduma from the time it's slaughtered until the time that it's made into ashes. Anybody who contributes to the work, who's part of the work, his clothing becomes tameh. So we're saying this includes the guard. Hamashamer sapara, whoever's guarding the paraduma during this point, mitami begodim, his clothing becomes tameh. V'amart mishamer lav kaose maisedami, and if it's like Shmuel that guarding is not considered in Ose Maise, actively doing stuff, well, then why does his clothing become tameh? If he's not actually considered like doing, if it's not considered like he's doing an activity. So says Rab Bar Ula, well, yeah, you're right. Technically, his clothing should not become tameh. Midoraisa's clothing does not become tameh because he's not Ose Maise. The only reason why we say that his clothing does become tameh is midurabanan, out of concern that he might move a limb or something. So we say, his clothing also becomes tameh. Most of Rav Kahana asks the kasha, Meshamer arba v'chomish mikshos, somebody who's guarding 4 or 5 squash gardens, squash patches. Harezeh lo yimale kreso me'echod med. He shouldn't, fill up his belly from, if he's watching Reuben, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, and Yisachar's squash patches, respectively, he shouldn't just eat from Reuven's and leave the others alone. Rather, he should eat equally from all of them. Now, but if you're saying, Mishamer lav ki oise maise dami, like Shmuel, then why would he be allowed to eat from these patches? They're still connected to the ground pre-harvest. Shmuel says that a guard would be unable to eat at that point. It's Rav who says that they can eat. So this sounds like Rav and not like Shmuel. So Rav Shimi bar Ashi be'akurin. It's talking about where they are already uprooted, and therefore they're already be'etzem, but they're considered disconnected from the ground. And at that point, Shmuel said that the guards can eat from it. Be'akurin shanu. Be'akurin v'alo nigmar amlachton l'maisu. But if they're akurin, if they're uprooted, the assumption is that they would already be chayim chumis and at that point. Shelo nito pikos shelen. Well, it's talking about squashes that their flour has not yet been removed from them, right? Like I mentioned, like the cucumbers that we get in Yerushalayim, that are the most gishmaki cucumbers you've ever had. They have these like little flowers at the tip of them. So that flour hasn't yet fallen off, so therefore it's not yet chayiv in Shumas and Maisvis, and that is why they're allowed to partake. Omer Rav Ashi kavosu d'Shmuel mistaver, and says Rav Ashi, ultimately it makes sense like Shmuel that mishamer lav k'oisei maise dami, and that only the scenario where the shomer can eat is when we're talking about disconnected produce pre Shumas and Maisvis. So Rav Ashi says, Rav Ashi kavosu d'Shmuel mistavra, that it makes sense like Shmuel the Tanan that we learned in a Mishnah, in the Mishnah on Daf Pezayin, and the one that kicked, the first Mishnah post Agadata. Rav Ashi kavosu d'Shmuel mistavra the Tanan ve'elu ochlin min haTorah, that these are the people who are allowed to eat mid oraise ha'oseh b'mechuber l'karka b'shas k'mar melacha v'tolosh v'chulei. right? Somebody who's harvesting or somebody who's processing detached produce pre-Trumas and Maisris. They can eat, says the Mishnah, min haTorah, mid oraisa. What's implication? The implication being, okay, those are the people who eat mida oraisa, but then there must be some people who don't eat, who eat, but not mida oraisa, but mehilchos medina. But if we go weiter, it says ve'elu she'einan ochlin, and these are those who don't eat. My einan ochlin. What does it mean einan ochlin? Ilema she'ein ochlin min haTorah ela mehilchos medina anu reisha. If it means that they don't eat min haTorah, but they eat mehilchos medina. We already learned implied from the Reisha. We already implied that from the Reisha that there are those who eat meilchus medina. Elav she'ein ochlin lo min haTorah v'lo meilchus medina. It means that there are those who don't eat at all. We're not allowed to eat at all. Not meilchus, not mehil lo min haTorah and not meilchus medina. Umayniu, who are those? For example, somebody who is working the field at a time that it is not harvest, cannot eat at all. And certainly somebody who's guarding a garden or an orchard when pre-harvest. So we see that is like, right, so we see that there are three categories, that there are those who can eat from the field mida oraisa, there are those who can eat mehilchos medina, and there are those who don't eat at all, right? And so according to Rav, right, there wasn't such a scenario, because even the guards of the fields, the ginos ufardesin, can eat mehilchos medina. But Rav Ashi says the implication of the Mishnah is that there are those who don't eat at all. That implies that it's like Shmuel, who says that the guards of the Gagos Ginos Ufardesin would not eat at all. Okay, so now we get to this Mishnah that feels just like a quintessential BavaMetzia Mishnah. It just feels like we've been like quoting it for ages and ages and ages. Here it is. I feel like this should have been like in Mafkid or something. Arba shomer meim. There are 4 shomers. Shomer chinam, ve'ashoel, nosei socher, ve'asocher. Boom. I don't know, have we ever had a Mishnah yet that just laid it out so clear? Like, we've learned all above a comma, almost all above Metzia. We finally get to what feels like this quintessential Mishnah that we just like have been sort of talking about for ages, but here it is. There are 4 shomrim: the shomer chinam, shomer socher, the shoyel, and the socher. Okay. Shomer chinam nishba ala kol. Of course, the shomer chinam is pater for everything, so long as he's not posheya, so long as he's not negligent, right? So nishba ala kol, he swears and he's off the hook. Swears that he wasn't negligent. And the opposite extreme is the borrower, since all the benefit is his, right? He gets all, he's borrowing it, he's not paying for it, the lender gains nothing by it, all the benefit is his, but all the responsibility is also his. And, even for ones, he's going to be chayiv. V'nosei socher ve'asocher, and a shomer socher, as well as a renter, the assumption being in this Mishnah that a renter has the same status as a shomer socher, which of course is a machlokas between Rav Meir and Rav Yehuda that we've seen several times. When it comes to shomer socher as well as a renter, nishboyim ala shvur v'ala shvur v'ala mesa. When it comes to ones, such as if the animal, breaks or gets taken captive or dies, so they swear that this was the case, that it was ones, and then they are potter, so they're potter for ones. But they pay for, but the chayiv for gneva ba'aveda. Okay, we've seen this 1,000 times. But here's the Mishnah. Says the Gemara, Mantano arba'a shomrim. Who is the Tana who says that there are 4 shomrim? Omer of Nachman, Omer Rabba by Avur, Reb Meri. It's Reb Meir. Omer le Rava the Rav Nachman. It says Rava to Rav Nachman. Who's the Tana that says 4 shomrim? What? Miika the leisle arba'a shomrim? I don't get it. Is there somebody who doesn't hold of the 4 shomrim? We've been talking about the 4 shomrim for ages. Is there somebody who says that there aren't 4 shomer? Shomer chinam, shomer socher, socher, shoel. So Omar Lei, so if Nachman responds to Rava, no, you're taka right. Hachi kamina, this is what I'm saying. Hachi kamina lach, this is what I'm saying to you. Mantana socher kenose socher. Who is the author of this Mishnah who says that a socher, a renter, and a shomer socher, a paid custodian, have the same halachas? Reb Meir, the answer is that according to Rabbi Bar Avua, that is Reb Meir's opinion. Reb Meir ipcha shaminan lei. Right, of course we know that Rabbi Bar Avua's opinion is the opposite of the Brisa, right? We've seen this a bunch of times. I think maybe even recently we saw it, right? That Rabbi Bar Avua says the opposite, that Reb Meir is the one who says that, right, meaning it's Reb Meir who says, like our Mishnah, that a socher is like a shomer socher rather than a shomer chinam. So again, so Rava asks Rav Nachman, but I thought the Brisa was fakir, that Reb Meir is actually the one who says that a socher is like a shomer chinam, not like a shomer socher in our Mishnah. Okay, what's the problem with the socher? Reb Meir omer kishomer chinam. Meir says like a shomer chinam. Reb Yehuda omer kishomer socher. Reb Yehuda says like a shomer socher. So why are you saying that our Mishnah is like Reb Meir? Rabbi Bar Avua ipcha katanila. Well, Rabbi Bar Avua Taka learns it the opposite. That Reb Meir is the one who says shomer socher. Okay, but why are we saying that there are 4 shomer? Essentially, there are 3, right? There's one who's potter for everything. There's one who's chayiv for everything. There's one who's potter for onsim, b'chayiv for gnei v'aved. So Omar Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, meaning basically, if a socher and a shomer socher are the same, so there aren't really 4. There's 3. So Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, Daled Shomim v'dineim shlosha. No, there are 4 shomim. There's the shomer socher, there's the shomer chinam, there's the shoyel, and there's the socher. But in terms of practically the categories of law, there's 3 categories. There's the category where you swear and you're potter for everything other than posheya. There's the category that you're chayiv for everything, and there's the category, right? So the first category is shomer chinam, the last category is shoyel, and then there's the category where you're chayiv for gnei v'aved with potter for onis, and that would apply to a shomer socher as well as a socher. There was a shepherd who was shepherding animals, and he was, I guess, moving them across the bridge of the Papa River. And one of them slipped and fell into the water, and I guess drowned. Also, the Kami de Rabba, so the shepherd came before Rabba Ufatre, and Rabba says, Potter. Because Rabba reasoned, what could the shepherd have done any differently? Hanoter kidinatre inche. He was guarding the animals the way that any person would be expected to guard. And one of them slipped and fell into the water. I mean, okay, he didn't do anything wrong there. Therefore, of course, the shepherd is a shomer socher, right? He's watching the sheep for a fee. So he is okay, but he didn't do anything wrong, and therefore it's considered ones, and therefore he's potter. Amalei Abaye says to Rabba, Elameato, Ol lemasa beidno de'ale inche. If a shepherd goes to the city, right? So he's got his flock and he leaves his flock. I'm understanding that that's the case, right? He leaves his flock to go to the city, but he goes to the city at the time that the people go to the city. So meaning he didn't do anything abnormal. Hochinami de potter, should he be potter if something happens to the sheep? Amalein, Rabbi says b'diuk, 100%. Yeah, he'd be potter because he didn't do anything wrong. Gonna porter beidna de gonna inche. What if he got a schnatz, a shenat zoraim? My neighbor, she likes her schnatzes, but I'm highly doubtful that she actually sleeps. But she uses it as an opportunity to yell at the people making noise in the park. That's between 2 and 4. We got to get our sleep. I assume she doesn't sleep, but she does yell at the people. Honestly, sometimes I wish she yelled a little more. Anyways. I wish that she yelled at the power washers. I'm kind of annoyed that I'm kind of annoyed that she really likes the power washers. I would have thought it would drive her crazy. She hates noise. Okay. Where am I? So gonna porta beidna diganu inche. If a person sleeps a little bit at a time, if he sleeps at a time when the people normally sleep, so the potter should he be potter? Rabbi says, yeah, of course he's potter, right? If he's sleeping when people normally sleep, so yeah, he's potter. Abaya sakasha to Rabbi, Eluim onsin sheshomer sacher potter alein. Abaya sakasha and Rabbi that the Brisa says that these are the onsin that a shomer sacher is part of them. There you go. Okay, here you go. Shomer sacher, great. These are the types of onis that he'd be potter for. Here we go. Here's our answer. Kigon. That is a scenario of ones. That Eov describes the calamity that befell him. That these Shiva people came and they took the animals and they smote the lads. It was like bad stuff. That is the kind of stuff that a shomer sacher is potter for. Not if an animal slips on a river. No, that is not extreme enough. Amarle, Rabbi answers, Asum b'chazane masa. Well, that sort of extreme level of ones would specifically be for the National Guard or the city guard, the people, the city guard who are entrusted by the people of the city to keep them safe. And I imagine that they're paid. It's right. They're paid to do that, shomer sacher, but they need to, right? Everybody's lives are in their hands. That they're expected to go the extra mile. Eisve, we have a kasha. Ad mosa shomer sacher chayiv lishmor. To what extent does a shomer sacher need to guard? Ad kidei, until, right, to the extent. Hayisi bayoma chalani chor v'kerech balale. Yaakov Avinu says to Lavan that during the day I ate heat and ice at night. Mamish, I exerted myself, I extended myself to the max. So Rabbah says there also it's talking about the guardians of the city. Abai says, what? What are you talking about? You're talking about Yaakov Avinu there. Yaakov Avinu was the guarder of the city. To Omar le Lavan, well, what he was saying to Lavan was, not rilachne tirusa yeserta kichazoni masa. Says, no, of course. Yaakov Avinu was not a guarder of the city. What he was saying to Lavan is, I was invested so much in my job that it was as though I was a guarder of the city. I worked to that extent. But says Rabbah, a regular sort of shomer chinam shomer sacher is not expected to sort of be responsible to that extent. Says Rabbah, he just has to be responsible up to the extent that a regular responsible person would be responsible. Eisvei, Abayas Rabbah Kasha, Roya Viniach Edro Uvala. If you have a shepherd who is shepherding, and he left his flock and he went to the city. Okay. And comes a wolf and tears up the flock, or a lion comes and pounces upon the flock. It says im omdim, but there's a note that should say im omrim. I like it better. In omrim ilu haya sham haya matzo. We don't automatically assume that, well, he's in trouble because if he was there, he could have saved the flock. Ella, rather, omdin also. We try to evaluate this situation. Im yochol lehatzil chayiv. If he could have saved the flock, well, then he's chayiv. Ve'im lav potter. But if he couldn't have saved the flock, well, then he's potter. Now, my lav da'o be'idna da'ayla inshe. And says Abaye, let's assume that this Brisa is talking about that he went into the city at a time that was regular, that was normal to go into the city, and nonetheless, we're saying that be'etzim, he's chayiv. That so long as he could have protected the flock, he's chayiv. He's not automatically potter because he did whatever the people do. Lo, says Rabbah, no, the obidna de lo aile in shay. No, he went to the city at a time that the people normally don't go to the city, and that is why he's going to be chayiv. If that's the case, amai potter. Well then, why, if there was nothing that he could have done, is he potter? Right? We said if he could have saved them, he's chayiv. But if not, then he's potter. Why should he be potter? He went to the city at a time that wasn't a regular time to go. Chayiv. That's a scenario of tchilasu b'pshir. He was initially posher. He went at a time that he shouldn't have gone. In the end, it turned out that there was nothing he could have done. It was inevitable. But that's what's called tchilasu b'pshir v'sofa ba'ones. That it starts out negligent. Now it ends in an ones. Yeah, ultimately there was nothing he could have done, but it started out by him being irresponsible. And in such a scenario, you're chayiv. So I would be potter if there was nothing he could have done. Tchilasu b'pshir v'sofa ba'ones. Well, it's talking about the shama kal aryeh ve'ol. Well, he heard the sound, he heard a lion approaching, he heard the sounds of a lion, and therefore he skedaddled. If that's the case, but then why are we saying, well, we evaluate if he could have actually saved the flock? What do you mean? How are you going to save the flock from a lion? What's there to evaluate? Obviously he's potter. Well, he could have put together a coalition of shepherds, and they all would have come down with sticks and scared away the lion. And that's why we evaluate if they would have succeeded or not. Well then, why are we specifically talking about a shepherd? Why are we talking about a shomer chinam? The same would apply even to shomer. Why are we talking about a shomer sacher? The same would apply even to a shomer chinam. Because after all, you, Rabbah, said, shomer chinam, that even a shomer chinam, if he could have assembled a group of shepherds with sticks and scared away the lion, well then even a shomer chinam would be chayiv. So why are we specifically talking about a shomer sacher, a shepherd? Can you even say so by a shomer chinam? Shomer chinam, b'chinam shomer sacher b'sacher. Eno chinami, but there is a difference between a shomer chinam and a shomer sacher, which is that a shomer chinam obviously doesn't need to pay. Shomer chinam obviously does not need to pay these shepherds to help scare away the lion because he's not working. He himself isn't getting paid. Whereas the shomer sacher would have to pay these shepherds to help him scare away the lion. How much does he have to pay? Ad kedei demand until the value of the flock itself, up to the value of the flock. But 1 second, if we're saying that a shomer chinam, a shomer sacher is chayav to pay up to the value of the flock to scare away the lion, well then he's basically chayav for, he has to pay out of his own pocket for ones. He's basically chayav for ones. He has to pay out of and suffer the loss, the financial loss. Well, he's ultimately entitled to get paid back from the Baal Habayis. To which Rav Papa asks Abaye, well, okay, this whole thing is starting to get strange in that you have this lion coming. And we said that the shomer sacher is responsible to hire a bunch of shepherds who are going to help him scare away the lion. He's responsible to pay up to the value of the flock itself. He then goes to the Baal Habayis and says, look, a lion was going to eat your flock, so I spent all this money equal to the value of your entire flock to scare away the lion. So what benefit, why is that beneficial to the Baal Habayis? And say the lion would have just eaten the whole flock. He'd be in the same place. He would have lost his whole flock. Like this, he has his flock, but now he's got to pay the value of the entire flock, so what does he gain? Well, this flock he's already accustomed to. He knows their habits. He knows the sheep. He knows how to work with them already. To have to start over is a big pain. Or that he's going to have to start looking and buying, and So yeah, even if he has to pay back the shomer sacher the whole value of the flock, he's still ahead in that he doesn't now need to start buying new sheep and learning their habits and things like that. Rav Chisda and Rabba bar Avua lo svir lehu had Rabba. Now Rav Chisda and Rabba bar Avua disagree with Rabba, who said that as long as the shomer sacher is just doing whatever is expected of a normal kind of shepherd or whatever, so then he would be potter. No. The Amrei, Rav Chizda and Rabbi Ravuna say, L'hachi yaivi loch agra l'naturali netiusi eserta. No. The Baal Abaye says to the shepherd, there's a reason why I'm paying you to shepherd my sheep. I'm paying you so that you are extra vigilant and extra careful. It's not enough just to do what's considered normal. You need to go above and beyond. That's why you're being paid. And therefore, if one sheep slips into the river, you're going to be responsible for that. You have to, only sort of extreme own sin would you be patur for. Bar'ada savolo have kame'aver chevoso agamlo dinarish. Bar'ada, the porter, the person who schleps stuff, was schlepping stuff. Where am I? Sorry, I lost the place. Where am I? Okay, Bar'ada savolo. She was transporting animals across the Narish River. And then one animal pushed another animal into the water. So the Papa and Bar'ada Savula comes before a Papa Chayve. Papa says, you are responsible. And Bar'ada says, why am I responsible? What should I have done? Well, you should have brought them across in single file. Bar'ada says, are you crazy? Is there anybody in this, Bar'achta, your sister's son, meaning anybody in the nation, is there really anybody who would do that? Single file? Look, you're not the first person to make these arguments to me. You're responsible. I'm not going to listen to any of your arguments. You need to, you're responsible. If one of them pushed the other one off the bridge, you could have transported them single file. Aivu afkid kitana beirunyo. Aivu was Rav's father. I assume that's who it's talking about. He deposited flax with runya. Ozal Shvo Shamte Mine, and Shvo came and stole the flax from Runya. Now Runya was a shomer chinam. L'sof hukra ganef. Okay, and then they found out it was Shvo who stole them. Also, they come before Rav Nachman. Chayve, and Rav Nachman says that Runya needs to pay Aivu. Lema pliged Rav Huna bar Oven. Let's say that this argues on Rav Huna bar Oven. The Shalach Rav Huna bar Oven. Rav Huna bar Oven said Nigniva be'ones, that if it got stolen be'ones, and then they found out who the ganef was, so you can confront him to get the money back, to get it back. Im shomer chinamu. So if he's a shomer chinam, like Runya was, rotza nishba rotza osa imodin. If he wants, he can pay back. Right, if he's a shomer chinam, if he wants, he can pay back the mafkid, the depositor, and then go to the thief and get paid back from the thief. Or if he wants to get pay the depositor and then go and take it up with the thief, or he could simply swear that it was honest and be potter. Im shomer sacher, if he's a shomer sacher, osa imo din benu nishba. But if he's a shomer sacher, well then he can't swear. Instead, he must. Right, if they know who the ganav is, the shomer sacher must pay the depositor, and then he's got to work it out with the ganef. So we see that by a shomer chinam, there is the option to swear that it was ones and be potter. So who is it, Rav Nachman? So why is Rav Nachman saying that Runya has to pay Aivu and then go settle it with Shvo? He's a shomer chinam. Shouldn't he just be able to swear and be potter? So Amar Rava says, Rava Hosam Gavre de Parmuska Habu Kaime di Ramakala Habasu Matsanle. Well, there was police around when Shvo stole it, and he could have yelled for the police to come, and Shvo wouldn't have gotten away with it. But he didn't do that, so that is why he needs to pay back Aivu and then take it up with Shvo. And now for the third and final Mishnah of the day. Ze'ev echod eino ones. If there's one wolf, that would not be considered an ones. Shnei ze'evim ones. But two wolves is ones. But if it is a time when there's like a plague of wolves, well then even one lone wolf would be considered onus in that scenario, in that context. Shnei klovim eino onus. 2 dogs, 2 hunts are not an onus. Yedu abavli onus is yedu abavli mishum Reb Meir. Meruach achas eino onus. If the 2 hunts are coming from one direction, it is not onus. But mishtei ruchos, if you have if you have 2 hunts coming from 2 directions, 1 hunt from each direction, respectively, onus, that would be onus. Halistim, how is it onus? A bandit, right? It says plural, but as we're going to see, the Gemara is talking about singular, as Rashi points out. A bandit is onus. Ha'ari, a lion. Hadov, a bear. Va'nomer, a leopard. Va'bardlos, a bardlos. Va'nochash, and a snake. Are elu onus. Those are onuses if they attack the flock or something. Emosei, when is that? Bisman shabo me'elen, when they came on their own and attacked. Avol olichon l'makom gidudei chay v'listim. But if you took your flock or whatever to a place that you know that these things were there, well then, onus. That's not onus, that's just irresponsible. Mesa kedarka areze onus. If the animal dies on its own, drops dead, it's onus. Sogvava mesa, but if you tortured it, if you starved it or whatever, and then it died, well, onus, that is not surprising, it is not an onus. Also, the Roshe Tzukin v'nafla areza onus, if the animal went up on its own and forced its way up to the top of some kind of a mountain, of a cliff, and it fell, well, okay, that's onus. What could you have done? It forced its way up there. But hela the Roshe Tzukin v'nafla v'mesa eno onus. But if you brought it up to the top of it's like a cliff, and it fell, you brought it there, well then you're going to be chayiv, it's not going to be onus. Now, why are we saying that one wolf is not onus? Says the Gemara, V'atanya zev echad onus. But we learn in a brisa that one wolf is considered onus. Amar Reb Nachman bar Yitzchok, ha'i b'shas mishlacha zevim v'Reb. No, that's at a time when there's a plague of wolves, and that's the opinion of Reb Yehuda, who says that in that context, one wolf would already be considered an onus. Halistim areze onus. A bandit is onus. Amai. Why is a bandit onus? Luki gavra lade gavra. 1 against 1. Kelu, you have a guy, he's he's a shepherd, and a bandit comes. So why is why is the bandit automatically considered stronger than the shepherd? It's 1 against 1. So Amirav belista mezuyin. So I was talking about where the bandit was an armed bandit. But what if the shepherd was an armed shepherd, and the bandit was an armed bandit? Mao, what do we do in that case? Do we say, well, it's an even playing field? 1 against 1, each one is armed. Or do we say, look, a bandit, an armed bandit who's doing an armed robbery, he's there, he doesn't care. He's there to either pillage or die trying. Whereas the shepherd doesn't want to die today. He wants to shepherd. And therefore he has no responsibility to face off against somebody who's willing to die. So therefore he's off the hook, the shepherd. Wait, what? Okay, so the answer is that, the assumption is that the bandit is crazy and the shepherd does not need to risk his life. Amarle, and it's considered onus. Amarle Abaye, l'Rava says Abaye to Rava, Ashkechei roya. What if you have a shepherd who finds this bandit, Amarle, and he says to the bandit, hey bandit, Ganova Sarya, you cheap Gana, you no good Ganif. Beduchta planya yasvinon. Well, there's a whole bunch of us in such and such a place. Kach v'kach gavre. Well, you bandit, there's 10 of us in this place. Ika baidan kach v'kach kalove, and we got a whole bunch of dogs. Ika baidan kach v'kach zekusa psikolon, and we got all these slingshots, and hey, you nasty, we're gonna get you. And sure enough, the bandit then just goes and steals. Has no problem with these people. So now what? So well, you basically brought this you just basically told the bandit where all your flock is, and so I guess the that shepherd was not using such great judgment. Okay, I think this daf ended up not being that long. So maybe like 45, 50 minutes. Okay, not that long. Yeah, we did a lot in today's daf. We saw the machlokes between Rab and Shmuel about is a shomer, a guard. Is he like considered like he's like osei ma'aser or not osei ma'aser? And then it seems like we said like it was like Shmuel. We got to the world famous Mishnah of the Daled Shomrim, which is Gevaldig, and then of course we got the machlokes between Reb Meir and Reb Yehuda about is a socher like a shomer socher or like a shomer chinam. And then we got into some of like the nitty gritty of the responsibilities of a shomer socher. We saw the opinion of Rabba, who says that he just needs to guard kind of like like a regular person would guard, whereas Rav Chizda and Rabba Bar Huna said no, he's being paid, therefore he must go ad asof. He has to go go to whatever extremes he can. And then we got to a final Mishnah about what would be considered different kind of onei situations with wild animals and thieves and bandits, and peace out.